Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. What does the loss of tinnitus as a rating mean to you, and what kind of collateral effects will there have regarding secondary conditions and all of that? There's a lot of videos out there about tinnitus and how it can really be the gateway in and then have all of these, a plethora, if you will, of secondary conditions because of your tinnitus ringing in the ears. But the VA has proposed a rating schedule change for auditory conditions, specifically tinnitus, essentially removing the diagnostic code for tinnitus and eliminating tinnitus as a standalone condition, meaning that you can no longer just say, I have tinnitus ringing in the ears and be rated for it at 10%, which is what is currently happening here as of October 25th, 2024. Now, moving forward, we can anticipate that the VA is going to update its rating schedule probably around April. At least that's the time frame that they have identified thus far to make these changes. What is this going to look like? Well, there's two things. One, you could go get rated for tinnitus now as a standalone condition, makes it a little bit easier. So let's jump into it. I'm going to share a little bit with you about what they're proposing, how it looks, and what you can do to make sure that you're still getting rated and you can still leverage all of these secondaries, boosting your disability compensation rating upward and putting more money in your pocket. With that, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. The two asks are really, look, hit the thumbs up and let the video run if you have the ability to do so. I get it. Everybody has a life and is doing things. But if you're cooking dinner, throw it on the side, let it run for a minute. Have me ramble. If you don't like my voice, turn it down. And this helps to push the information out, right? And if you want to support the channel in other ways, consider being a member. Thank you so much to all you members. I do my best to get back to you in the comments. Thank you so much. All right, so let's jump into this. The Federal Register, which is kind of the depository of where the VA and other agencies put in information regarding changes that they're doing, and it allows time for comments and so forth. So back a few years ago, 2.5 years ago, the VA put in this information into the Federal Register about changing the rating schedule for auditory conditions. Now, again, they're essentially eliminating tinnitus as a standalone rateable condition. Tinnitus itself, ringing in the ears, will still exist. It's not like that symptom is going away, right? Somebody can still have ringing in the ears, and that can still be a thing, right? It's not like this is disappearing. But what is the VA doing, right? The VA is essentially saying, look, we believe you have ringing in the ear, but we're not going to rate you for it. What we want to do is we want to consider the ringing in your ears to be a symptom of another type of condition, and then we'll rate you for that. So what does that mean? That means that you need to work further with your doctor and make sure that you are being diagnosed appropriately. And look, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Treat it like this is $1 million deal, because it is. Put the effort in, right? Have the conversation with your doctor. I got ringing in my ears. I want to see what that's associated with. Where's this coming from? Is this a symptom of a different condition, right? Now, they actually talk about this in the schedule of ratings here. And I wanted to, first, I'm going to front load it with the announcement piece just regarding tinnitus. Then I'm going to jump into the Federal Register and read to you a couple things from there and then digest that. So in the announcement from the VA that they were proposing these changes back in February of 2022, the one sentence that they talk about tinnitus says, for tinnitus, the proposed changes would recognize the symptom within the veteran's broader ailment and provide service-connected compensation for tinnitus through the disease to which it is attributed. So we're not going to rate you for tinnitus. We're going to rate you for the disease that is causing you to have tinnitus, whatever that may be. So that's one thing. Now we jump over to the Federal Register, and in the Federal Register, there's a bunch of information. I'm going to share with you a couple little pieces here, and then I'm going to talk about what you can do to really make sure that you're not impacted by this kind of a negative change, right? You got to put a little more footwork in because of it. So here we are in the Federal Register. It says, although VA will not alter its definition of hearing loss for compensation purposes, it proposes several updates to the current terminology found in the 38 CFR. VA also proposes a note adding a 10% evaluation for non-compensated hearing loss with tinnitus. What they're saying here is that if you have a very, very minimal service-connected hearing loss with a 0% hearing loss, and if you have tinnitus, they're going to still pay you a 10%. But it's only for if you're 0% hearing loss. If your hearing loss goes upward, the tinnitus 10% add drops away. So you only get rated 10% if you have 0 hearing loss and tinnitus. And what they're doing here is they're looking at hearing loss and going, hearing loss is your diagnosed condition that your service connected for. And oh, by the way, tinnitus is part of that, part of the symptoms of your hearing loss. And in this case, they're giving you a 10%. So this is the only spot where they're really kind of generous, I guess, with it. So you really are going to want to try in this situation to get that 0% service connected for hearing loss. Now, again, it says the 10% evaluation for non-compensated hearing loss with tinnitus present, where tinnitus is related to the diagnosis of hearing loss. So you want to make sure you're having that conversation with your ear, nose, throat doctor, right? And make sure that they list tinnitus in their findings as far as your mild hearing loss. All right, so now something else in the Federal Register that's interesting here, I'm going to read to you, is, and again, there's a lot of little blurbs here, but I am going to skip a lot of it and jump to this. VA proposes to evaluate tinnitus only as part of its underlying pathology and to delete, remove DC, which is Diagnostic Code 6260, entirely. What does that mean? That means that they are eliminating tinnitus as a condition, really, from VA disability compensation in the schedule of ratings. So tinnitus as a standalone condition will no longer exist. So then it goes on to say, in other words, tinnitus will be compensated through application of diagnostic codes, and it gives several: 6100, 6204, 6205, 8045, 8046, and 9305, which are all different conditions within the rating schedule. So what we can do here is I can actually do each one of these for you. So 6100, let's see what that is. All right, 6100 is hearing loss. Let's move to the next one. All right, so I pulled them all up here so I don't have to keep bouncing back and forth. All right, so 6204 is the code for peripheral vestibular disorders, which includes things like occasional dizziness and dizziness with occasional staggering. So that is 6204. The next one is 6205 diagnostic code, and that is used for Meniere's disease or Meniere's syndrome, which is also with or without tinnitus, dizziness, unsteady gait, that type of stuff. So very similar to the other one. 8045 diagnostic code, 8045 is really for TBIs, traumatic brain injury, and so that would be 8045. 8046 is arteriosclerosis, cerebral arteriosclerosis. Whew, that's hard to say. 8046. And then the last one here is 9305, is a code that is used for major or mild vascular neurocognitive disorder. So there are several opportunities there to be, I guess, diagnosed for a condition that would have something like tinnitus associated with it. jumping back into the Federal Register here. All right, so it basically says, look, we're not going to rate you for tinnitus alone. What we're going to do is we're going to look for an associated disease that would have potentially tinnitus as a symptom. And then it listed out those diagnostic codes. And again, it actually says we're going to delete tinnitus from the rating schedule. In other words, tinnitus will be compensated through applications of those diagnostic codes that I just read, depending on its service-connected cause. So we'll pay you out if we can say that that disease was due to your time in service. So what does that tell me right there? One, just shooting your rifle over and over again, unless you're moving to hearing loss, not compensated hearing loss, 0% hearing loss, because you were, shooting rifles or doing artillery or dropping mortar rounds or whatever it is, working on jet engines, being a mechanic, air guns, whatever. Something that could contribute to hearing loss, service-connected 0%, you would still get your 10% for your tinnitus. Otherwise, you're going to have to prove that one of these diseases either manifested during your time in service or was caused by your time in service in some sort of fashion, right? So now it's definitely raising the bar for proving your service connection beyond the fact I was surrounded by loud noises and now I have ringing in the ear, right? So the only way that you're going to be able to really associate that would be to go to the 0% hearing loss with a 10% for tinnitus. All right, now let's move on. It says, for tinnitus associated with service-connected hearing loss, in particular, the presence of tinnitus generally does not impact earning capacity beyond what is already contemplated at the compensated levels of hearing loss. Though VA recognizes that the presence of tinnitus combined with a non-compensated hearing loss could have more than a 0% impact on earning capacity. Thus, the Diagnostic Code 6100 will provide that 10% evaluation for tinnitus associated with hearing loss only when hearing loss is not compensated. Okay, only when hearing loss on its own does not warrant a 10% evaluation or higher. If hearing loss is compensated, warranting a 10% evaluation or greater, an additional 10% evaluation for tinnitus associated with the hearing loss shall not be assigned. All right, so what's going to happen is tinnitus is going to disappear as a rateable condition on its own. The VA is going to take two different buckets, we'll say. One is hearing loss with tinnitus and diseases or conditions that are potentially causing tinnitus as a symptom. So, if you fall in the bucket of disease or injury like TBI that is causing tinnitus, then you need to prove, right, to the VA your nexus. You need to prove that your illness, or injury that is causing that tinnitus is service connected, right? You need to prove the nexus, that it manifested during your time in service or as a result of your time in service in somehow, some sort of shape, way, form, whatever. Now the other one, this is the important one. This is the one I think that is the most closely to what we already have. Okay, the only difference is now we must be rated at 0% hearing loss. Okay, it's not much. The hearing schedule is pretty stringent, but you could try to fight if you get denied a 0% service connection for your hearing loss. So essentially, most people who are getting tinnitus today, claims that are filed and getting awarded, most people are, I was exposed to loud noises, I have ringing in my ears. That's it. All my loud noises were during my time in service, and now I have this ringing in my ear. Great, you get diagnosed. You got your diagnosis for your tinnitus, and you have a loud noise MOS. Right? Boom. you should get service connected for it. Once the changes go into effect, once the proposed changes go into effect, April-ish of 2025, now that story is going to be, okay, I was exposed to loud noises. Here's my MOS. I have tinnitus ringing in the ear, but I also have mild hearing loss, right? So really I have mild hearing loss from my time in service and tinnitus. Then when you're rated at a 0%, you will still get the 10% rating because of the tinnitus add-on. Now, as far as secondaries are concerned, your secondaries can stem from, so if you take all of these, well, these two different buckets, injury, disease, illness with tinnitus as a symptom, and then your hearing loss with tinnitus, either all of that stuff, take any of those, and if you have any secondary conditions due to your tinnitus that you would file for today if you had tinnitus, any secondary conditions as a result of your tinnitus, well, now you're going to say it's a secondary condition due to the service-connected, whatever the condition is. My Meniere's disease with tinnitus, my non-compensated hearing loss with tinnitus is why I'm now with this secondary condition. So we can still work the tinnitus angle, right, if you will. You just need to do a little more footwork and be a little more, I guess, pointed with how things are being structured. With the tinnitus is not the cause, tinnitus is the symptom or the in addition to, and then you're getting diagnosed for the other things, right? You're diagnosed for hearing loss with tinnitus. You're diagnosed for Meniere's disease with tinnitus. You're diagnosed for TBI with tinnitus. And that is how you'll get the tinnitus piece roped into it all for any secondaries. So with that, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.